What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. For this video, being that I'm a forever rogue player despite doing guides on many different topics in WoW, I wanted to talk with you all about interactions of double legendaries for Outlaw rogues, or at least a build that is looking quite popular and is honestly a lot of fun. I wanted to do videos for other combinations, including both subtlety and assassination specs, but I figured I'd start with Outlaw since it is my favorite one of the three, and because I've been playing with this combination quite a bit this week already in Dungeons and Raid. If you end up liking the idea for these sorts of videos, let me know in a comment or just by liking the video if you don't want to write anything. That way I know if there's a sizable chunk of the audience that's interested in this sort of stuff or not. So, Double Legendaries became available this weekly reset if you've been caught up on your Zereth Mortis campaign, and if you have your reputation to Revered, then you can even make the Unity Double Legendary power effect on any piece that you want instead of having to use the 265 belt that you get free from the campaign. Outlaw has a number of pretty decent legendary powers right now, with several different choices being close-ish damage gains. Some options, though, have seemingly appeared out of basically thin air, with the focal point of this build being the Invigorating Shadowdust legendary. This legendary seems very unorthodox at first. Every time you cast Vanish, the cooldown of all your other abilities other than Vanish are reduced by 20 seconds. This is originally a PvP purchased legendary power, but never really saw much traction in PvP at all. Until 9.2, with the advent of Double Legendaries, Shadowdust saw basically very little use anywhere, since Celerity was the tour de force in choices for basically all PvE scenarios. Several of our Covenant legendaries were already really decent, and with the Unity power you have to use one of those Covenant powers based on whatever Covenant you're in, hence why the Unity belt that you earn from the campaign swaps between all 4 Covenant effects when you swap Covenants. The most important aspect of the combination of Shadowdust and your Covenant legendary is that Invigorating Shadowdust also reduces the cooldown of your Covenant abilities too, meaning all the legendary effects that greatly improve Covenant powers can be used even more often. The 2 Covenants that see the greatest impact on reduced cooldowns are the Kyrians with their Echoing Reprimand ability being buffed by Resounding Clarity, and Venthyr's Flagellation ability being buffed by Obedience. In particular, I've been messing around with the Kyrian Resounding Clarity Unity effect combined with Invigorating Shadowdust, and personally I think it's one of the most fun builds currently available to Outlaw rogues. We already have a lot of cooldown reduction via the True Bearing Roll the Bones buff, as well as the Restless Blades passive, both of which give cooldown reduction based on how many combo points we spend. Resounding Clarity amps this up even further, as it causes combo points 2 through 5 to become anima charged, and when you use a damaging finisher on an anima charged combo point, it gives the cooldown reduction and damage effect of 7 combo points. Spending combo points of course reduces the cooldown of Vanish, since it's part of True Bearing and Restless Blade's cooldown reduction list for abilities, and every Vanish then reduces the cooldown of all abilities, including Echoing Reprimand, by 20 seconds. Echoing Reprimand already has a very modest 45-second cooldown, so this shaves it down to 25 seconds. What's even better is the Soulbind Forgelight Prime Mechanicos and his effusive Anima Accelerator. For every target you hit with Echoing Reprimand, you shave off another 3 seconds, up to a total of 5 targets or 15 seconds. In AoE situations, this means we're getting Echoing Reprimand down to as low as a 10-second cooldown between Vanishing and Effusive Anima Accelerator. This all gets even wackier in Mythic Plus situations with the new Season 3 Encrypted affix. One of the 3 relics that you kill, gives a beefy 300% cooldown reduction buff when you kill him, as well as 10% health and mana restored every second for 10 seconds. Cooldown reduction buff affects all of your abilities, including Covenant ones, which, you guessed it, means more combo points spent, which is more Vanishes cast, and more Echoing Reprimand slapped out, which then means even more anima charged combo points to give you even more cooldown reduction. This all stacks up to even more damage from Echoing Reprimand with its Reverberation Conduit, and the damage over time effect of Effusive Anima Accelerator, and you're basically using this thing so much more often than you normally could be, and you can probably imagine just how fast you're getting cooldowns off of this build. A big plus to all this, besides being super fast paced and fun, is that you're also getting the cooldowns of your defensive moves back quicker too. Normally speaking, abilities like Kick, Gouge, Blind, Kidney Shot, Tricks of the Trade, and Cloak of Shadows are not affected by your passive cooldown reduction from Restless Blades or True Bearing. With Invigorating Shadowdust though, you're casting Vanish a lot for your offensive moves like Adrenaline Rush and Echoing Reprimand, and this means you're actually getting all of your defensive buffs affected too. This makes you even harder to kill, which is very handy in both Raid and Mythic Plus keys. This build does have a couple small quirks to it, however. You'll need to kinda retrain your brain to not just hit Vanish right away on a boss pull or a trash pull, since you want to make sure you get all of your cooldown and based abilities used prior to popping Vanish for that free 20 seconds shaved off of all those moves. This includes things like Adrenaline Rush, Echoing Reprimand, and Mark for Death. Basically, all those should always be on cooldown before you pop Vanish, whereas Ghostly Strike and Between the Eyes aren't quite as big of a deal, since you really just need to keep the debuffs active on your target, so refreshing them constantly, generally speaking, isn't ideal. There are a couple scenarios where that changes up a bit, but the DPS gain or loss is minimal at best, so I'm personally just hitting Ghostly Strike and Between the Eyes when their debuffs are about to wear off, or when I'm swapping targets like we usually do. This loadout is also kinda sorta ludicrously fast, like you'll be well into the mid-70s for actions per minute, so if you already have a hard time keeping up with the speed of Outlaw's rotation, then you might not be a fan of this new setup. This also means in raid encounters where you have to move away from the boss or deal with mechanics, it does reduce how much uptime you have, and when you're doing this many actions per minute, that is kinda not a good thing. Thankfully though, most of the bosses are pretty melee friendly in this raid, so this wasn't really that impactful to overall damage numbers to me. I personally feel that the perks of higher cooldown uptime, more defensives being able to be used, and having a new twist on the gameplay of Outlaw all outweigh the potential cons of the Kyrian Shadowdust combination if you aren't playing at like a super competitive level. I've yet to try the Venthyr alternative, which uses the Dreadblade's talent for crazy amounts of combo points, but I'm sure I'll be trying that out in raids pretty soon now that I've had a couple of days to try out the Kyrian setup. As of this video, I only have a 2 set for tier, and actually do higher damage in Outlaw than Subtlety with this loadout. Outlaw's tier is very middling in performance, however, and Subtlety's is quite awesome, so these damage numbers will eventually tilt into favor of Subtlety, but until I RNG my way into getting a 4 set or the Creation Catalyst opens, this definitely is a worthwhile option to try out, especially if you really enjoy playing Outlaw. Anyways folks, I hope you enjoyed this brief discussion on the Kyrian Shadowdust Outlaw build. I'll be doing more rogue stuff in the coming weeks, as well as more general topics and discussions, especially now that we have some juicy new information about patch 9.2.5. As always, my appreciation and gratitude to all of my viewers and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.